Bitcoin has touched an all-time high along with other cryptocurrencies, and there are two important Golden Visa program changes you should be aware of. One good, one not so good. We're going to talk about those news stories, and I'm going to tell you why, if you are in the crypto space enjoying the all-time highs, why Golden Visas may not be your first choice. I'm Andrew Henderson, doing a little news today. Got our R&D team of 6 people around the world figuring out all the programs that you haven't heard about, keeping up with all the latest tax law changes. There's a lot of stuff that changes in this business, so I got them cranking, brought in a few grizzled industry veterans, and decided to take the day off today. But for me, taking the day off is I wanted to share some news with you. So Bitcoin touched an all-time high, and a lot of people are wondering what they should do. What I've been very clear about from the beginning is, it takes a little bit of money to protect the money that you have. And one of the things that we see in our business is we have a trusted network of hundreds of people all around the world. The lawyers and other professionals in Europe, if we send them €1 too little, they wait to start the work until we top up that €1. Let's say their bank charged them an extra euro in fees, and they're like, hey, I'm €1 short on 5,000 euros. For me, that's the price of doing business. We accept payment from clients in crypto. If you come to Nomad Capitalist Live, we take other payments that charge us a small fee. To me, there's a price of doing business. And some people see that, some people don't in the business world. In the Bitcoin, the crypto world, the price of doing business to me when you're at these all-time highs is there's increased scrutiny. Politicians are going to be looking at it. People, as the Western world continues to suffer and people talk about income inequality and they want people to do something about it. You don't think that the 3- and 4-letter tax agencies around the world, which have billions of dollars at their disposal, and they're better than you and I at finding your Bitcoin, you don't think they're going to make that a priority to go after and find people who are due to pay taxes, or they're not going to want to add taxes or increase taxes on Bitcoin? When something gets in the news, it becomes a bigger thing. And so what I've always done in my life is, by the way, I first got Bitcoin in late 2013, early 2014. It was somebody saying, hey, I want to come to your very first ever live event. Can I pay you in Bitcoin? It's like $800 at the time. And I held on to it for a while. I remember looking at it, it was like down to $250. I'm like, oh, this is terrible. Then it went back up. I think I eventually sold it. I got back in when people started talking about it like September, October of 2017. So I got a bunch at like 4,000 and just kind of rode that wave. I just kind of forgot about it for a while. Probably, wasn't as hot on it, for a while in like 2018, 2019. I was not totally into it at that point. But when the pandemic started, 2020, came back to it, and especially towards the end of the year, did some of our biggest stuff. So I personally have some Bitcoin. We have it, some Bitcoin as part of our treasury management at the company. So probably the average price is around $30,000 in the Bitcoins, just because so many more volume would have been in like early 2021. I'm not 100% in Bitcoin. I'm not 100% in everything. That's just not my personality. If it's yours, I totally respect that. We have people we work with that are into that. My only thought is we all have choices of how we can spend our money. There's stuff that we do around here. We put $1 into something, we get $25 back. I mean, that's like a growth stock. It's better than a growth stock return. That's a crypto-like return in some ways, especially if we kept duplicating that. Some of those things don't scale as well, so it's hard. Maybe you can only spend $10,000 a month, and after that, the results start to peter out. But, anything that I've chosen to do to protect myself, when I spent $100,000 plus the fees to get St. Lucia citizenship, when I've made investments to get other residences and citizenships, when I bought homes to make sure I've got places to go, some of that's a lifestyle decision. I mean, nobody needs 5 passports and to be working on more. Nobody needs as many residence permits as I've had. Although, we do increasingly have clients saying, I want to be covered in every corner of the globe, because who knows what can happen. We saw in 2021, pandemic plus crypto surge, people were concerned because they saw what the government could do. And so, for me, it's always worth taking some percentage off the table. I like to live at a single-digit percentage of my income, and I could live like more of a baller, but I'd rather save money into a variety of things. And going forward, put more of that money back into a business, which is a growth stock. But the point is, I could have put any of that money I saved into Bitcoin, into some other crypto, into a dividend stock that pays me cash, into treasuries, into growth stocks, into Nvidia. I mean, there's any number of things we can all put our money in stuff. I could just leave it sitting on a table somewhere. I could buy gold. I mean, there's any number of things that you choose not to buy when you reinvest into something else. For me, it's been very valuable. And there's a feeling of peace which I have, which then allows me to make better decisions than everything else I do because I have multiple citizenships, residences, homes, places to go. And I think that's the important takeaway from this Bitcoin all-time high. I don't think, if you believe that Bitcoin is going to keep going up, I see numbers $150,000. I will say I was talking to one of our vendors in the Balkans, and they're saying people are increasingly wanting to buy real estate with crypto. And it's not a bad thing to do, but, it says, it could go to millions of dollars. What I don't want us to do is to get carried away. What I think I've done a decent job at in my life is being pragmatic, maybe at times too pragmatic, of saying, if I bought something at 30,000 and now it's at 69 or 66,000, and I only have one country that I'm tied to and they can change the rules of the game at any time, you know what? Maybe I'll take some percentage of that. Now, we work with people who have $1 million in liquid assets or more. But if you have $1 million or a couple $1 million in Bitcoin, take a little bit of money off the table and make sure the rest of the money is safe. Because I think, as the goody two-shoes of the offshore business, I never wanted to look over my shoulder. I'm an entrepreneur, and I think that a lot of entrepreneurs think because they're good at a couple of things, that they're smart and good at everything. And we all have to fight that urge. I always realize that the IRS where I'm from, or whatever the agency is where you're from, they're better at collecting taxes. And so ultimately, the benefit for me to renounce U.S. citizenship, it wasn't driven by wanting to reduce taxes. But, fewer forms to file, like not having to look over my shoulder, not having to worry like I made some tiny mistake. That's a good thing, not a bad thing. And you don't have to go to that extreme, particularly if you're not an American, but you should have a second passport because eventually, it's in the headlines everywhere. People who never talk about Bitcoin are going to be talking about Bitcoin again now. And so everyone's going to be thinking about it. But with that comes scrutiny. It's kind of like why certain old money families like to never be in the public eye. There's certain families, and I know a couple of these guys, like you can't find a picture of them. They take great pains to make sure there's no pictures of them anywhere. They don't want to be known. Being known brings with it some scrutiny. I'm okay with that because I am the goody two-shoes of the offshore business, and I dot every I and cross every T. We spend a lot of time doing that. And so as you see this, I would encourage everyone, focus on compliance, but focus on go where you're treated best. Because I think that the idea that agencies are going to throw billions at figuring out who bought what when. I know a guy from the radio business. I don't know him particularly, but I know of him, and I know people who know him who just got sent to jail for a long time for not, whatever, I guess crypto money laundering, and do I think that they push it too far sometimes? Yeah, probably. They bring 100 charges. It's like in other countries they would bring 1 or 2. But the government is not going to screw around. Right? And all these people who think, I'm smarter. I never wanted to think that I'm smarter. I just wanted to legally go where I'm treated best. Now, golden visas. 2 changes. Here's the good news. Portugal golden visa. Some people have been waiting for quite a while to get theirs approved. I went so far as to say with some of Portugal's tax changes and with what they were doing with the golden visa, I just wasn't a fan anymore. Portugal's golden visa allows you to spend very little time in Portugal, learn the language to a basic level, and naturalize after about 5 years of residence, plus the time at the front end to get the residence, plus the time at the back end. By the way, nobody else talks about this in the industry. People are still saying you can get passports in 60 days. Approvals take a lot longer than that now. Citizenship by investment has taken longer. We see that. There's an interview requirement now. It wasn't there when I was there, but things are only going to get harder for all the aforementioned reasons. It's better to do it now. But you have to count the time on the front end. And if a country decides to take a long time to approve you, or if they make you go back and collect other documents because you're doing it yourself, or hiring some Yahoo lawyer on an island, or some small law firm, and they just kind of put the burden back on you, it's going to take you a longer time to get your case submitted. But the challenge we've all had with Portugal Golden Visa is that they just take a long time to approve these things. Well, now there was a lot of back and forth, and now we have the green light. This is about a week or two ago from the Constitutional Court that Portugal's going to go back to the time of the residence application, basically to when you filed, not the time that you. So what we've got is confirmation from Portugal now that they're going to go back to the date of residence application. So not exactly the day when you started everything, but relatively early on. And that could shave a year or two off of people's timelines to naturalization who've been waiting around. And so what's cool about that is, even if you haven't been visiting Portugal, it seems, at this point, which why would you? You weren't approved for residence, but they're going to credit you with that time. So let's say from the residence application to the time you actually get everything approved is 2 years. You'll have 3 more years before you can apply for permanent residence or citizenship. So, I mean, there's always some time at the front end that's not really going to count, but they're basically going to count it. And so that is good news. So if you're already in the queue, or if you're looking at Portugal's Golden Visa, I mean, they've gotten rid of the real estate options. They've cracked down or just reduced some of the options for some of the funds. And I'm not giving you investment advice, I always kind of liked the funds because if you don't want to live in a country, which you're kind of saying that, hey, I'm just going to spend my 7 days or some similar number in other countries, I'm just going to spend that amount of time there, you're basically saying, I don't want to live there. Now, a golden visa means you could move there whenever you wanted to, as long as your residence permit stays active. So it's the option, but not the obligation, which is a nice thing to have. But for me, if I don't want to live somewhere, why would I buy a piece of real estate? Why? Because I think it's going to go up faster than a fund. This is my point of the Bitcoin thing. Take some percentage of your net worth. I don't care if it's 1 or 10 or 20, you choose. And just say, this doesn't have to outperform everything in my portfolio. It does not have to be super optimized. It's going to get me protection. It's going to get me a lifestyle. In the case of a golden visa in Europe, if you get Portuguese citizenship, and it seems now that they're going to basically make it for a lot of people, it's going to be a year or two faster. If you get that, you can live in any country in Europe. So you've got about 30 countries that you'd have access to live in. Who knows what could happen in this crazy world? Taxes, black swan events. I'd rather have 30 countries to choose to live in than one. Now, they're not the most diverse group of countries, but, Norway and Bulgaria are different. Spain and Estonia are different. There is some difference. Switzerland has some unique, attributes. We have very high net worth folks who get European passports, whether it's Malta's program, or they do a slower golden visa, and then they go and live in Switzerland. And you get a much better tax deal in Switzerland as a European than you would as, let's say, an American. And so if you want to dramatically reduce your taxes with Switzerland's lump sum program, you get a better deal having the European passport. So the bottom line is a golden visa is a good program for someone who doesn't want to, let's say, to go the Malta citizenship route, where in 15 to 18 months, you're going to pay close to $1 million for you and maybe your spouse, and you can add on kids for a reasonable price from there. But all in, close to $1 million. That gets you the European passport in just over a year. If you don't want to throw that, to be gone with that money, the golden visa is where it steps in. So anyway, Portugal has made, there's fewer options to qualify. Some of the options that I thought gave you the benefit of real estate without the obligation to own it are gone. So it's a more difficult program in terms of just the options aren't there. But if you're looking at it as, I'm going to make an investment, if I make a decent investment, it's not going to lose money. Maybe it loses a little, but that's not what I'm doing it for. I'm doing it to secure my ability for myself, for my family, for future generations, that we have this tie to Europe. If you're already a European citizen, obviously you're not going to do this. But if you're American, if you're Canadian, you can live in one country. What if you had the ability to live in 30 countries by making an investment? That's worth something. Figure out what that insurance premium is worth, and that's what you should be comfortable paying. And listen, if I'm in Bitcoin or anything else, I'd rather have 30 countries that I could say, okay, where's the good tax deal? Where's the good regulatory deal? I'd rather have that than have to go and scramble for a residence permit. Not that residence permits are hard to get in tax-friendly countries, but sometimes things change on a dime. I've seen times when you have 2 or 3 weeks to make a move. And if you don't have the second passport, or if you don't have a place to go now, you're gonna get hit with the tax. And so that's why having this stuff is good. So that's the good news on Portugal. Now, Greece is the not so good news. Greece raised the price of some of their gold and real estate a while back. Now there's talk that they're going to have a couple different price zones. So 250,000 euros is kind of like the entry level for Greece. It's 500,000 is where you're generally going to start in Portugal. So Greece is a deal. Greece does not allow you to naturalize without spending substantial time there. Greece does not naturalize people as easily as other European countries. And I, for 10 years, been looking at that, and I think it's true. So Greece is a golden visa if you just want the ability to live anywhere you want in Europe. Greece has a tax incentive, which could actually dovetail nicely with the golden visa. Portugal no longer is really that tax-friendly if you're just coming in now. So Greece is a lower price. It could be tax-friendly for living, but you're generally not going to get there for citizenship. But now they've said, okay, people are buying property in Athens and the islands. They already raised the prices in a couple dozen kind of municipalities. Now they're talking about the top places being 800,000, the middle being around 500,000, and then the places like 250,000. Generally what we saw in Portugal and what I think you'll see in Greece is that lowest number is going to be places that you're not that keen to go to. Maybe there'll be some island, but it's going to be an island that like there's not an airport or something, or you've got to like paddle out in a canoe, or it's going to be some undeveloped place. We saw that in Portugal where the interior people put opportunities together. Probably not places that from a lifestyle perspective, I mean, Greece to me is more of a lifestyle golden visa, whether it's Greece specifically or Europe access in general. It's not so much of a plan B that leads to citizenship. It's a lifestyle option. Again, you don't have to live in Greece to keep the golden visa at all, but you have to live there to get citizenship. And again, even then, so two different kinds of golden visas. This is the stuff we talk to our clients about, but that's kind of a basic look. So 250,000 is not going to get that much in Greece anymore. So essentially the price is going up. Same thing we've seen in Turkey with their citizenship by investment program. I always tell you the price goes up. Occasionally in the Caribbean, we've seen citizenship by investment deals where the price has temporarily gone down, but I think those days are over. I don't think you'll see more deals there. I think there's pressure to raise prices. And so there you go. By the way, golden visa, not the worst thing to pair with some kind of citizenship. I know people have some concerns about how does a tiny island going to keep visa-free travel. Tiny islands are actually increasing visa-free travel. Antigua got visa-free travel to China. We're seeing Saudi Arabia open up to more countries. I mean, those are, you may not like those particular countries, but those were countries that were generally very closed. Only to the closest of allies where they open. So they're opening up. We're seeing other countries open up. You know, Montenegro, for example, opened up, I think, to all the Caribbean citizenship programs in recent years. So, you know, Caribbean passports, a lot of passports. Georgia's passport just got a few new visa-free countries, Saudi Arabia, China, Russia in the last year. Again, you might not like those places, but they are not easy places to get into. So a lot of Tier B passports, as we would call them, are getting better. The only countries that might be judgmental are the West. Europe, US, Canada, Australia. That's about it. Maybe the UK. UK went after Dominica. They did not go after the rest. If your concern is the West, then having something in Europe would be a nice counterbalance. You have the visa-free travel, you have the access, and you have the freedom of a citizenship by investment passport. So the idea that you're just going to go and get one passport, one golden visa, solve all your problems, number one, you're going to overpay if you do that because you're going to get a more expensive option than you need when you could have split the job between two different things. But you're probably going to be lured into some guy on Instagram who's posting stuff about the particular program they recommend. Greece or St. Lucia or Paraguay or the UAE. I mean, we want to be agnostic to the location. If you could have Portuguese citizenship and you had access to all of Europe, do you care to be Portuguese and then be able to try, like, I get sentimentality, but if Portugal is the best path to get what you need strategically, get the life that you want, get the protection you want, you know, like, do that. Like, I think people should be shopping around and not just going for, here's the one program I want. Greece has the lowest price. And now it's going to be harder to get the lowest price in Greece. But the bottom line is the prices for all this stuff is going up. The requirements in the Caribbean are going up. And I think that the concerns people have can be very well mitigated by what I've always said, which is don't just have one thing and think that one bank account, one passport, one golden visa protects you. Now, I promised I would tell you if you're in Bitcoin, the golden visas, why those may not be the best deal. And the answer is there's an opportunity cost. If you have to put 500,000 euros into property that's not even in the absolute best location, by the way, you're going to see these lower tiers, the prices are going to go up. You're going to see some of the best places in the 250 and even the 500, you're going to see some demand that's going to raise prices. That's what we saw in Istanbul. That's why my property in Istanbul has gone up in value in dollar terms. But anyway, if you're in Bitcoin, if you're in crypto, opportunity cost, you shouldn't be focused on spending nothing of your Bitcoin. But you should be focused on, hey, if I can get a passport for $100,000, or if I can invest 500,000 euros, let's call that $540,000. So if I'm spending 5.4x, one gives me an instant passport, instant protection. One gives me a better passport, but I have to wait and I have to do some stuff, and it's going to be 5 years. And that other 4.4x, right, the other $440,000 is not going to work for me. That's something you have to consider. And I think people in Bitcoin and crypto have the highest opportunity cost. By the way, so do some entrepreneurs. I mean, if you have more opportunities than I do to turn $1 into $25 and you're not limited to scale, if you sell yoga pants and you can just run unlimited ads and you could put $1 million in a month into ads and get $10 million out, you should follow the same rules. But you should still protect yourself, because the more money you make, the more you need a second passport, the more you need a tax plan. And I think people wait until it's too late. They end up paying too much tax to get out of the tax situation they're in. And it's just not ideal. So I've always said, you want to have a residence permit, passport, tax plan, maybe a home set up at some level of success. And opportunity cost has to be considered. Now, at some level, people should just pay the $1 million for Malta because it may not be around forever. You may do something to disqualify yourself in the future. Who knows what could happen? I mean, if you could afford to do that, that solves all your problems at once. Even then, you probably want other options outside of Europe. But for most people, if you just have $5 million, there's not a lot of situations. There are some where you spend the $1 million of the $5 million. The rest of it is, putting the pieces in place. So I mentioned the 6 R&D people we have here. We have a lot of people increasingly who have experience in our industry in various areas, who know stuff that I don't. And we, I think, have the most comprehensive understanding of all the different programs out there. We are program agnostic. And so if you are in Bitcoin, or if you're not, if you're anyone who just wants to make sure your capital is working for you and you get the protection of having an alternative to your one country, I think Nomad Capitalists can do the best job for you to make sure you have access to all the options and you don't just get lured into, hey, here's the one. Or talk to someone recently. He said, I called some company. They have 4 passports they offer. They can't really tell me the difference between them. They can't tell me why I need a second passport. They can't tell me why I shouldn't get a second passport another way. They're just like, hey, here's our 4 passports. Which one do you want? Very rarely, again, going back to if you're an entrepreneur, if you're an investor, you're good at that. Are you good at choosing one of 4 passports? Are you good at realizing that some of those guys are making $25,000 commissions off of selling you their favorite passport because they've got skin in the game? For us at Nomad Capitalist, you pay a flat fee, you get unbiased advice. You get access to dozens and dozens and dozens of different countries, and we just finalized our back-end system called Minerva with lots of stuff, where I think it's one of the most advanced tools in terms of knowledge base in the industry. So if you are concerned about protecting yourself, go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply. If you're not at the $1 million level, we'd love to have you at Nomad Capitalist Live. Go to nomadcapitalist.com/live. It's our 4-day annual event. By the way, I should have said this earlier, but if you leave a comment below, if you'd like to hear more news, if you'd like to hear my takes on the news, I just decided to sit down and do this. And I wanted to give you my Nomad Capitalist approach, of course, in the stuff in our industry, but also what's happening with Bitcoin. And my answer is, again, very simply, the price of being successful is you have to sacrifice a little bit of something, right? The things I could do when I didn't have any money, I wouldn't dream of doing it now. Now, I call lawyers and I check the most minute of details on some things. Why? Because the consequences are too high. If you're becoming increasingly successful, including because the value of your assets are going up dramatically, I mean, what, 60% in a month? I mean, 50% in a day for some of these cryptos. You know, the game has to change. You can't be the same person at $100 million that you were at $100,000. You just can't be. And the concern is when you went from 100,000 to 100 million faster than most people, you know, were there lessons learned in that? And that's, I think, if you're an investor who's done very well in something like Bitcoin or crypto, these are the things you have to be concerned about. You know, you can't have the policy of protecting yourself and insuring yourself that you did when you didn't have that much money. And I've learned that because I've been pretty slow and steady over the years. I've had some big years. I've had some smaller years. But I've learned that. And that's what I want to pass along to people who are now enjoying back at all-time highs. Make sure you're covered. I would have rather put $100,000 for a passport back into something else that would still be there. I don't know. I'm taking a trip. I don't know where the passports are. They're somewhere around here. But I'm glad I have the passports. And you know what? I don't look back and say, oh my God, that 100,000 could have been worth, 372,000 now. I say, yeah, I have this. I made the best decision at the time. It came in handy. It saved me in other ways. Probably saved more than the money I would have made because I had the protection, because I had something else, other options, right? I didn't have to just sit there and take it when bad stuff happened. That's probably worth more than 372,000, just a hypothetical, in the context of my entire net worth. All right. So keep that all in mind. If you want to hear more news updates and takes on the news, just leave a comment below. Yes, talk more about the news, Andrew. We want to hear about it. Check out Nomad Capitalist services. Check out Nomad Capitalist Live, the annual event, and a lot of interesting things happening that people need to be very careful how they respond to make sure they keep enjoying everything good that's happening.